Hello, everybody, and welcome today to our Clipper session sponsored by Soft Academy. Thank you very much for your votes that we have received through email. The votes, it shows that the strategy right through our line chart, it is the most acquired topic, and there was recommendations that we resume with Agile. So we have decided to present for you today with Agile methodology. So hope this session went well, and let's get started. Right, so we're going to resume with the second session, right, of Agile methodologies, right? Basically, we're going to be looking onto the Agile as a concept, right? And we're going to be looking onto the methodologies being used with Agile. Now, Agile, when it comes, it is being characterized as it's being a time box. And a time box, it means that every methodology, for example, if we're talking about Scrum, it has an identical timeline that is 2 to 4 weeks. So your boundaries are in between 2 to 4 weeks. So the development team, they need to perform their effort sizing in terms of story points for every user stories, right, based on the time box being set. When it comes to extreme programming, we're discussing a time box of 1 to 3 weeks. We're talking about feature driven, we're talking 1 to 2 weeks. Now, as we have discussed from the previous session as well, we do adopt what we call in Agile an IID, Iterative Incremental Delivery. So again, we're looking here on the duration, 2 to 4 weeks, if we're talking about Scrum. Now, the software requirements, right, they are being decomposed into user stories. So what happened is that we do have our product owner, right, and according to the market needs, right, and according to the return investment that he oversees, that well, those are the valuable requirements, and those valuable requirements, they would have a high return on investment. So based on them, I'm gonna select them, right, and are the ones that will be able to get me a quick return investment, great NPV, net present value, in a small payback period time, right? And then he goes and discuss it up. He fills it in a product backlog, prioritize them, right? And we're setting the ones with the highest level and the one with the lowest level. And then he provides, right, according to the estimation that he sets the importance, right, of those requirements to be delivered to the development team. They are being based onto two. On each iteration is being based for effort sizing based on the capacity of the team, the size of the team I do have, and the plan I'm going to follow with the team. Now, during the iteration, right, the team in every cycle, they need to collaborate all together, right? So what they do, they perform initial analysis, they perform initial design, they perform coding and testing, and then they deploy. And every iteration, right, it undertakes what we call a sprint review. And a sprint review, it means that we are actually looking for a demo, right, to be presented to the product owner or to the customer. Now remember that the customer, he had delegated the product owner, right, to be able to handle all the work, since the customer could be busy at his duty and his work, right? So the product owner, he's the one who is a reflecting image of the customer on the delivery. Now the sprint review, it takes a half day, right? And the other half day, it is being set for the almost 2 to 4 weeks for a sprint retrospective, right? And a sprint retrospective, it is being the way you perform with lessons learned on your how to improve onto your process, and how you do recommend what are the actions to be taken for the next iteration delivery. So what we call a retrospective. Now, when it comes to the XP and Scrum, they both have a generic flavor. So as we have discussed, what happens in actual is that the product owner, he goes up to generate a certain vision, a certain idea, right? I need to build a certain product that will have a big splash into the market, right? And I'm able to get a high return investment. So he needs to have a certain idea. He has a vision, he has a mission, he has a goal, he has an objective, right? In order to meet a customer requirements, okay? From the organization spotlight, right? Or they'll call the company spotlight. So once he has all of those requirements that he needs to produce them, he's going to place them into a product backlog, a big list, right? And he's going to add more than that, the flavor of the priority. What are the high priorities and what are the low priorities? And then he will go to the development team, right? By the way, he's going to set as well the delivery dates, right? He will go to the team and he will spend a half day with them to explain for them what are the requirements, and he asks the team to provide him with an effort sizing, right? So the whole process takes 8 hours. 4 hours, the product owner explains what needs to be done and explains the high features, and the next 4 hours is the team just perform their estimation. So we place them into a sprint backlog, or we call it a release plan. And then once the iteration planning has been performed, it goes up into an execution, right? And during the whole process, on daily morning, we have a daily stand-up meeting that lasts only for 15 minutes, discussing the following questions, right, from the product owner with the Scrum Master, right, to the team. What we have completed yesterday for every sprint or for every iteration, and what we are continuing with at the moment, and are there any impedance or issue you are facing, right? So and you should be knowing that the meeting is being performed in a stand way, so that we don't spend a lot of time. We just ask questions, get the answers, look for any problems, solve them in the top spot, right? And then everyone goes to his office to work. And then we do have, okay, as we have discussed, we do have an IID, iterative incremental, in which we do have a product increment. That means we are executing and delivering, right? Every sprint is being executed, and it delivers a finished product that's delivered to the customer in the form of, we perform with a team an iteration review or a sprint review, and that is basically a demo, right? And that demo, it takes a half day, 4 hours, right, to present to the client, right, the product that it's working. For example, if we have a web page being customized, so we show him how to set the username and passwords for every resource, right, and as an administrator part, right, and then how to the users can log in, right, with their username and password. So if the customer, he does have certain pinpoints, right, so those things are being taken in considerations as a change request to respond to it. It goes up into the iteration planning. During the iteration planning, we perform an effort sizing for those needs. First of all, we need to look whether they have been stated in the product backlog. If yes, then we have to directly work with an estimation for it in the form of story points. If not, then if it's a change request, right, so we add them into what we call a product backlog grooming, right, because we cannot go ahead and work on it because it will affect onto the other, okay, iterations. So we put it in a product backlog grooming, right, so later on to be taken consideration for it, and an effort sizing is being done in the form of time and cost and how it will affect onto the scope. Now the sprint retrospective, it takes 2 to 4 weeks, and that's basically how to recommend improvements into the process in the way we deliver to the client, which is fed up in again during the iteration plan. So on the next sprint, right, we start working, let's say sprint 2, we start working with those lessons learned. And then the project is being released, and we do have a work software which is being added up into the reservoir of delivery into the client and into his credits. Now, the same process, as we can see, that it applies for the Scrum and Extreme Programming. Now, the Scrum, the only difference between Scrum and Extreme Programming, okay, is that Scrum, it takes 2 to 4 weeks, time boxed. XP takes 1 to 3 weeks. Scrum, It's being a lightweight as well to an XP, but XP as well, it does have added a TDD, a test-driven development, okay? And but both, they are both of having the same generic flavors. Now, when it comes to Scrum, right, well, as you can see, the Scrum, it is actually been undertaken from the American football, that's rugby. And it's based, the football game is based upon two things, flexibility, right, and it's based on speed, and most importantly, speed, right? And the pillars of the Scrum, it comes into three. We do have the transparency. So there's a transparency in between the development team, in between the Scrum Master, the product owner, right? They are all being transparent to each other's, right? It's being adaptation. So once I have a process, it's being adapted. So I'm sustained development for that process. Inspection, it means that we perform a continuous improvement whenever we are moving, right, onto the process, and we put recommendations. Now, when it comes to the Scrum methodologies, we do have what we call a pre-game, a post-game, and development. A pre-game is basically your sprint planning, your iteration planning, the plan you build on how to deliver. The post-game, it has to deal with the integration. It has to deal with your product backlog. It has to deal with your sprint backlog, okay? And development is your sprint execution in which you deliver through. Now, once we have all the pillars being completed and the methodologies, so we can see that when it comes to a product backlog that's been set by the vision of the product owner and according to the marketplace, the requirements and the high return investments and the net present value, high net present value, and the higher and the short payback period, right? And according to that, he sets the requirements. As we can see that the building blocks of those requirements were set by the color of yellow, and we have the light blue, right? Now let's say that the yellow are the most important features. Those are the ones which they have the higher features and recommended for a marketplace with high return investment as compared to the lower ones. Now the lower ones, we don't keep them, but we work them, but at the end of the project. So the team, what they perform is that they pick up from the product backlog the most important features, right? And they place them up into a sprint backlog, right? And they set the time box in between 2 to 4 weeks, right? And with a daily Scrum meeting of 15 minutes, right? And then the product is being executed, a sprint review that occurs a half day in the form of a sprint demo, and then a retrospective that takes 2 to 4 weeks, feedback on the requirements, right? And taking in consideration lessons learned for the next sprint. So that's the nutshell, right, of the methodology and how it undergoes. Now, when it comes to the Scrum Agile, you have to know that Scrum, it consists of 3 rules, 4 ceremonies, and 3 artifacts. The 3 rules are being the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the team, right? And the ceremonies, they are being set up into form of the sprint planning, the product backlog, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. And the artifacts we do have is the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the product increments. So remember, when it comes to Scrum, it's very important. We have 3 rules. Who are the 3 team players? Scrum Master, product owner, team. And we have 4 ceremonies, right, which they are the sprint planning, the sprint review, the daily stand-up meeting, and the sprint retrospective. And we have 3 artifacts, which are the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the product increment, which comes from the IID. Now, when we look onto the product owner, right? So who is the product owner? What is his role? I need to become today a product owner, and I want to play it into the Scrum, okay, methodology. So he is the voice of the customer, because the customer, he's the one who had delegated the product owner to take the responsibility of knowing the requirements and with the high market potentiality marketplace. And then you need to know he's the one who is striving to make a high return on investment, to make the profits, okay? He is the one who sets the release date and the consistent date, right? He's the one who maintains the product backlog. He's the one who sets the highest priority of requirements, okay? The PO, he does not need to participate on a daily stand-up meeting, right? He just has to spend half day in the sprint planning to give the requirements to the team, and they perform with the other half day, right, with the estimation. So we're having a common understanding and a rapid of communication between them. The product owner, remember, he is a crack. So a crack, it means that he is be a person of commitment. The word he says, it means he's committed to. He's being responsible. He's being authoritarian. He has authority. He has as well a collaborative. He works with the whole team back and forth. He is knowledgeable. He has skills and knowledge, right? When it comes to the Scrum Master, he's being the servant leader for the team, right? He's as well being the uphold the values and the practices. He's the one who needs to attend the daily Scrum meetings. He is the one who he is trying to solve all the issues or the impediments that would be discovered in between the team. He removed the external nutshell services and issues, right? And he's helping to the product owner to maintain the product backlog, right? And in order to make sure that the goal has been achieved. Moreover, the Scrum Master, when we have a new member being joining the team, he's the one who explains to him how the process works, right? And he put them up into the mood of work, so he start working with his colleagues. Now, when it comes to the development team, they are the ones whom they're going to deliver. They are the one who are going to execute, right? So they're the one who's going to get the finished product in the form of chunks delivered. The team size, they are between 5 to 9, okay? And they should be working on the basis of a full time, and the team could be changed from time to time.